All right, well, hey, welcome back to the Thousand Words Show. Super excited today to have my good friend Ben Brettingen with us. Ben has been around the outdoors industry for a number of years in a lot of different roles that we'll get a chance to hear about. Super talented photographer, maybe even better with a 28 gauge shotgun in his hand, but we'll kind of leave that to be judged as we start looking at some of his photos. But Ben, appreciate you coming on today and just giving us a chance to kind of chat through a bunch of photos and just photography industry stuff, outdoors industry stuff.
No, I appreciate the opportunity to be on, and I'm excited for it. It's a lot of the areas I get to talk about more so are I don't have a camera in my hand, I have a 28 gauge in my hand. So this is great. I'm looking forward to talking about the behind the lens aspect more so.
For sure. You and I have shared a lot of days in the field together on a number of different assignments and just even some, pleasure hunts and just different stuff. So I'm excited because I do think and know that you have, a history behind the lens as well with great stories to tell. We'll take a look at some of those images and stuff today and hear a little bit about, you're kind of living this hybrid life between, shooting with the camera, shooting with the gun, hosting some stuff, producing some stuff, and all of the different things that you've done. But take us all the way back, like professionally, back to kind of what got you started as you finished with school and kind of got into the industry. What were some of the things that kind of have gotten you on the track you're on now?
For sure, yeah. So growing up all throughout, as a kid, high school, college, huge hunter. That was my number one passion. And actually, when it was in college, I went to North Dakota and I was a huge waterfowler, and we had this idea of let's film all of our hunts. I don't know why we decided we wanted to film all our hunts. We didn't really do anything with it, but it was it is fun to have, and did that. And I think when I got my first still camera, it was I was in college, freshman in college, went and bought a bow, and it was big purchase in college, flagship bow. And I think the next day I went back, or 2 days later, and I returned the bow. I was no, I want to get a camera. And so I returned my bow for $1,000 after they had spent all this time probably setting it up and whatnot. And I went to Best Buy and got a Nikon D40 or something like that with a kit lens, and then it was off to the races. It was just fun to experience learning the camera, learning the setup, and that's really where it kind of started at. And from there, did that throughout college, and I started writing a little bit. I had a column in the school newspaper, and then got the eye of a gentleman that started a magazine. It was called the Minnesota Sporting Journal, and I started contributing as a writer to that. And then obviously at the time I had gotten pretty proficient after 4 years with the camera, so at that point I felt like I was taking pretty good photos, so high quality photos, writing. And then I was going to go to grad school, and he offered me a job to be an associate editor, and he was paying it all, so out of pocket it was some paltry amount, and I was this sounds great, I will work for nothing. And yeah, so then I got to go do that, and that's kind of that's the early days of how I got started.
Cool. And did that lead into, I don't want to jump over anything terribly important. I'm sure your parents were really excited that you were going to go do a job that didn't make any money, but you just had fun at. But did that lead right into the stint with In-Depth Outdoors? I know that was a big part of your kind of springboard as well.
Yeah, for sure. So I had the background in some media, although limited, and my video skills were very crude at the time. But yeah, they were looking for a videographer, and I think I put together, I remember I was actually filming for a little stint for Wardens, the Outdoor Channel TV show out in Montana, and I saw this, somebody sent a job posting, and so I had filmed a hunt, earlier that fall, and I was well, I need to edit something. I just had raw footage, so I remember sitting in the hotel room shooting interviews so I could string this piece together of myself. And I got the job. And then IDEO was great. I was able to learn a tremendous amount in a relatively short period of time, and kind of what I chalked that up to was the way that format of that show is, and you see it more nowadays than you did back then, but it was a broadcast TV show. It was on FSN. We would film a show Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then it would be edited Thursday, and it had to be delivered by Friday at noon, 1 o'clock. Full on half hour. Production quality did not suffer. So the cool thing about that, while it was an absolute grind doing that for 26 weeks through ice season of all things, was that you got real-time feedback. So you got feedback every single week about, if working with editors, I would edit some, but it's like, oh man, this just didn't work. We missed this part of the story. We missed these connecting shots. And so for 5 years, I got feedback 20 every single week, which, that made a huge difference. And I see it as I moved later on in my career. I was a producer for Primos, executive producer for their TV show. And that's when I really saw the benefit of that, because our videographers would only get feedback once a year. And then it was like when it rains, it pours. It's like we would film 26 weeks, and then over the summer, or we would film whatever, say elk season, deer season, turkey season. We wouldn't start editing elk season until the summer to get ready to air for third quarter. And so at that point, you're not learning much, right? It's like, it's just a dump. Like,
yeah, you're just out hitting record. You hit record and capture it and put it on a hard drive and hope that you got what you needed.
Yeah. Like that was a huge eye-opening experience. And the other thing with IDEO is the production work we did was pretty incredible. Lots of cool, unique things. And James, who owned the company, he was a techie guy, loved camera gear. And so, if we wanted a new jib, or we wanted, I think they were like when the first Ronin came out, we had one of those giant things, and we hung that thing from I think it was like a 12-foot jib off the front of a boat, and we were getting boat-to-boat shots. This was before real drones. You had the GoPro, where you strapped the GoPro onto a drone, and you couldn't see what you were filming. So it's like that jib stuff was at the time was cutting edge.
You got, obviously when you were doing that many episodes and just turning them every week, it was sort of just like throw you into the fire and you figure out, how to do it and what would be cool. And like you said, getting feedback each week. As you look at that and maybe your time with Primos, which we'll talk more about with a couple images coming up, but what was your technique, especially in a pressure pack situation, for learning how to craft a story that wasn't scripted? Obviously, if it's hunting and fishing, there's no script to it. And what did you find that worked effectively as a producer or a cameraman in kind of crafting the story as it happened?
Yeah, that's a great question, because the best line is the Primos tagline was, "This isn't Hollywood, it's the truth." Our TV show is Primos Truth About Hunting. So, that really it gives me the shivers a little bit, because that encapsulates, that's what outdoor TV, outdoor production a lot of the times is you can manufacture a story to an extent, or tell a story through the lens of something, but a lot of the times we were going out and we were trying to tell a story of the hunt as it was unfolding. So you could go in with like preconceived some storylines and whatnot, but the best storylines are when you are out there and experiencing things and being able to read what is happening in the field through video. And if you did a good job of that, man, you didn't need any like forced storylines, anything like that. Just being out there and the camaraderie and the fun and the experiences, the sights, the sounds. If you could portray that accurately through the lens of a camera, just let the story unfold. But you had to know what elements you needed to capture in order to tell that story A to Z without there being big gaps, and then you take the viewer out of it and you really lose it.
Yeah, you were right in the middle of the kind of, I'd call it the heyday of outdoor television, which I think there got to be a little bit of burnout with that because there was so much of it. But having a production like you're talking about, I think it was sort of like it was reality TV before reality TV, where, it's just like people that are into the outdoors and into those adventures, they could actually watch it on their TV, which was really cool.
Yeah, 100%. And really, it's probably because of I think a lot to do with my personality, but then how I was brought up through outdoor TV video production was very educational based. So you were telling a story, but then you would weave in education to ultimately help the viewer be more successful at whatever endeavor they were pursuing. But it's that balance between education and entertainment to keep them hooked up, but to also tell a story within it.
Yeah. Did you have any like experiences that pop in your mind that were just like the most epic of epic? You kind of talked about the jib off the front of the boat and some of these things, but any like just epic, harrowing stories or experiences that you'd be able to share?
Yeah, one of the first one that always comes to mind is we were up trying to film a TV show in central Ontario, and so from Minnesota it was like a 18-hour drive or something up into the bush. It's about as far as you can drive on a road in this direction, and we had got up there, and you're taking a gravel road for like 60 miles to get to this lake, then to get on ATVs, or we had Rangers with tracks, or snowmobiles or whatever, and you were down this goat path, and then you were taking this lake for like 7 or 8 miles. And so we got out, had just an epic day fishing. The weather was beautiful, and driving back, we had one Ranger with tracks, one without, and all of a sudden we hit a slush pocket, and boom, like the belt gave out. It was the belt on this new unit. And I was like, okay, well, we'll all pile into the other one, and no problem, make a couple trips, and about 300 yards later, belt goes off on that one, and just shredded. And we were we were 5, 6, 7 miles on this lake at the time, and it was getting dark out after filming, and so it's like, all right, well, let's set up the fish house. And I think we ended up like getting warmed up or whatever, and saying like, heck with it, we're gonna walk to the truck. And so we didn't have any, we didn't know if we were gonna come back for camera gear or whatnot, so we just grabbed the most expensive like Pelican cases and dragging them through the snow, got back to the truck, and this is wild. Got back to the truck in the morning, drove down to Thunder Bay. Yep, these are the right belts. They weren't the right belts. We snowmobiled back out, no dice. Drove all the way home. 2 weeks later, come back up. And these things at this point, it was like 40 below. Like, we're the point where I remember getting out there, leaning against the frame of it, and getting frostbite. And we had axes and spud bars and belts. And we spent an entire, I think, day and a half shipping out these Rangers to get them out and get them back on the trailer. So that's the thing. It's like this isn't somebody else's problem, right? Oh, just send the production crew. It's like, no, that's all of us. And we ended up getting them back, and in one piece. But that was pretty brutal.
That's kind of like you're saying that wasn't for Primos, but that is that it's not Hollywood. That's the truth. That is. That's off the charts. And like you said, you didn't have a choice. It wasn't just like you were gonna, pull up the production van and load it up. I mean, the reality was having to deal with it. Let's change gears just a little bit into your time with Primos. Obviously a brand and a storytellers that most people in the outdoor space have heard of. One of the photos that I want to take a look at, one of the first ones you've got here of, I think you said it's Will Primos, and let's just have you kind of just tell the story of kind of what was happening with this photo. It's not one of those that's going to win, crazy awards because people all know exactly what's happening. But I think if you were probably an upland guy, a wing shooter, a dog owner, you have some sort of feel of what's going on here. But kind of give us the story with what's happening.
Yeah. So this is just such a unique place. It's southern Arizona, where they have Mearns quail, and it's just a very, very isolated area of the country where these birds exist. So everyone knows Will from hunting big game, hunting waterfowl, turkeys, but Will's first love was upland birds, and now he went back and he is an upland bird just nut. I think he's went back to Arizona every year since we went then, and I think it was in like 2018 or something like that. And we had went out with a guy down there, a friend of mine, and become Will's close friend, and it was like, this is our first time hunting Mearns quail, and Will was just, he was fired up. Like, I had filmed Will, I had been with Will for years before that, doing upland or doing waterfall, all this other stuff, and I've never seen him so excited just to go out and hunt something. It was pretty spectacular to see him so fired up. But that picture there was from just a monumental, just awesome day. I think we ended up moving like 11 or 12 coveys that day, and that's Pat Flanagan's dog Rita, I believe, on point. And the cool thing is about that photo is you can't see him, and it's like bare dirt in between Will and the dog. And it was just picture perfect. Dog is facing you. Will's going in there, and you know that there's birds. This dog doesn't lie. Rita was an absolute stud. And it's like, and we stood there and we were looking, and there were like 12 to 15 birds somewhere in between that dog and Will. And it's just like, it's amazing that you cannot see them there. But the other thing that, I mean, I don't know if this was a happy accident or not, but I've gotten a lot of I think that I've used that in some Onyx ads and whatnot since, but just like for us, it is all about the dogs for bird hunters. So it's like, I've got a lot of like weird praise for it. Like, oh, I'm glad you focused on the dog. Like, it's not about the hunter, it's about the dog. So I think at the time that was a happy accident, but I think quite fondly of that trip, and really that paints a pretty cool picture in my mind.
For sure. The one thing that it made me think about, obviously not knowing exactly what was happening, I can look at it and go, well, the dog's on point, the hunters are, I mean, there's things happening here that as an upland hunter you know, but without knowing the specifics. But it made me think of, and I've experienced this and I've experienced it with you in the field. What do you feel like are some of the challenges of upland hunting, bird hunting, capturing the wing shooter as a photographer or videographer? Because right away you look at it, you can say happy accident because we all know that everybody's got an affinity with their dogs, right? We want the dogs to be the focal point. Any hunter would say that. You've got this hunter in the foreground a little bit out of focus. You've got the dog tack sharp. You captured the happy accident of the dog being the, like, here's where this is happening. This is the moment of truth, if you will. But what do you feel like are some of the challenges when you do have a camera in your hands capturing a moment like that?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things is when you're wearing multiple hats. A lot of these trips that I am running dogs, I'm hunting and trying to shoot photos at the same time. That whole dynamic is weird in itself because it's like trying to pull your focus from, okay, I've got to control my dogs, help, and a lot of the times when you're with other people, trying to help make them successful, while like I still love to hunt. Like, I'm a hunter at heart. Yep. So I still want to shoot birds, but also like I've got this affinity for shooting photos, right? So just that kind of pull between those different things, and a lot of the times it's, your big thing for me is I'm trying to help other people be successful. So that a lot of the times is at odds with getting good photos. So that's one of the big struggles. And then you can transition over into the technical side, where a lot of these birds are found in dense cover, whether it's grouse in the Northwoods, as you experienced more so this last fall, Matt, or they're in tall grass. So it's like a lot of what it is, it's like, oh man, you're shooting through brush, you're shooting through grass. Everything is moving. It's not like a deer hunting necessarily, where it's like if you're sitting with a hunter, things, I mean, they happen fast, but generally not as fast as bird hunting. And you have to have that anticipation of what's going to happen before it happens to put yourself in the right situations. Otherwise, a lot of the time the action is past before you're like, whoa, that happened fast. You're like, yep.
I think there's also one thing that pops in my head all the time is the safety part of that, where you've got hunters with guns, and if you want that at all to be part of the subject matter and not just the back of a head or the back of a hunting vest, you want to get out in front of them to show their part of the story as well, but you don't want to compromise the hunt. You don't want to be in an unsafe situation. So I think, like you said, bird hunting especially, there are so many things that you are juggling, unlike sitting in a tree stand and the deer is going to walk by and things happen, or even in the elk woods where, or turkey woods for that matter, where something is happening in a pretty, not always predictable, but more predictable situation. I want to ask this as kind of a two-part question. One, tell us a little bit about what your role is and what your job is with OnX, and then how do you balance that job with OnX and so many of the responsibilities you have, but also this love of dogs, of hunting, of photography, of all those things? I get asked all the time, like on these hunts, like, do you get to hunt? And I'm like, I probably could, but I just love telling the story with the camera. And I know that you have to wear 4, 5, 6, 7 hats. I mean, you're planning the meals, and you're driving the truck, and you're running the dogs, and you're thinking about cameras, and you're thinking about the brand that you're representing with Onyx. Tell us, what do you do for Onyx, and then how do you juggle all of those things?
For sure. Yeah, so I'm the marketing manager for Onyx, and kind of what that entails is if you see an ad on TV, you see a print ad, you see a podcast ambassador or YouTube channel, my team and I, we manage kind of a lot of that external facing brand. That's where you see Onyx Hunt, is you're going to see that's through our teams. A lot going on there, a lot of things to juggle. So that's kind of the day-to-day job, and that obviously manifests itself into the field as well. Yeah, like then, a lot of the times I'm, let's just say I'm working with an ambassador. You go out on a hunt, a lot of the times you're shooting video. And one of my pet peeves is like, if I'm out and I'm doing a video, I don't want to see a GoPro on somebody on video on their head. I'd rather not see a camera hanging off their hip, because it just takes away from like that authentic experience. It's like it makes you, and I wouldn't consider myself a quote unquote pro, but it's like, yeah, it pulls you out of that, like, oh, why is that camera hanging from his hip? So it's like when I'm in the moment, I want to do justice to whoever I'm hunting with, as well as to the final product, that video that's coming out. So a lot of the times on those trips, like my photography is bookend, right? And which is fine in a lot of the cases, but it's maybe early in the morning I'm going to get some shots, or late in the day it's like, hey, let's just put the cameras, like the video cameras, away, and let's go shoot video, or let's go shoot stills while the light's good, etc. So it's like I can see that progression as I've gotten busier at work. Like it'll just get more abridged and bookended. But then, like you brought up, if you're, whether it's a media hunt where I'm coordinating all of the logistics of it and hunting and trying to provide a good experience, and then it's like, man, to have one other thing to do is just overwhelming in a lot of cases. So what I've found that works best now is if I want to go out and shoot photos, I'm not even going to try to hunt. I can run dogs and shoot photos at the same time, but if I put a gun in my hand, that's when things change. So it's the same thing with the camera. It's like if I bring a shotgun, I get wrapped up. I'm a bird hunter. I get excited about it still. Nowadays, I find myself leaving the gun back, running dogs, taking pictures. Another one where I shoot a lot is when I trial. I started to get into bird dog field trialing, especially in the grouse woods, and that is great because there's no pressure in terms of having to shoot birds. There's not even an opportunity, especially in the spring. And you can run your dog, tune your dog up, and then just focus on shooting great photos.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that leads us really nicely into another photo that I want to ask you about that you had shared. And it's I think from a composition standpoint, I love it. I think it's intriguing, just the way that that you kind of framed this one up. There's obviously something going on with a guy and a dog, and he's got his whistle, and another guy's got a horse, but it's just a very interesting composition. I love the simplicity, kind of little guy, little dog, big sky. You've got this interesting tree, rule of thirds. There's all kinds of nerdy photography stuff that goes into a very cool composition, but tell me some of the story of what's happening besides all the technical stuff that I just rattled off.
Yeah, so like this one, the story is what does it. Like, is it a exceptional photo? No, but the story for me, at least, that's what does it justice. So that was out at a horseback field trial in eastern North Dakota on the Cheyenne National Grasslands, and the dog you see there was a dog named Northwood's Atlas, who passed away this summer. And that was when he was young in his career. I think he passed when he was 7, but that dog had been it was a champion bird dog, went to the Grand National Grouse Championship Invitational, which is like the top, I think, 14 dogs in the country. And dog passed away, and then the guy in the black is the judge. His name's Ian McTavish. Later last year, he just had a big health issue, intestinal blockage. Like, he has been on a recovery from back, I think that was in June, all the way till now. So it's just, for me, it's like, it's kind of, you got that foreboding sky, and it's like two people doing what they absolutely love to do, and then a dog who absolutely loves what it does. Just the fact that, I mean, I don't know, just that one makes me think in terms of just how fleeting things are, how fast things can change. So when I look at that picture, I'm like, okay, just like appreciate what you're doing while you're doing it. Like, yeah, for the dog, it's like that is their sole purpose in life. So it just reminds you, yeah, just be in the moment, be engaged. Tomorrow is never promised, right? So when I see that one, that's just my takeaway message.
And I think all that being said, I mean, that's all powerful, but it's still an intriguing photo. You kind of, when you first sent it and I looked at it, I'm like, composition wise, there's a lot of kind of just cool technical things about it. But the fact that you bring in, the sky and, just even the demeanor, they both have this like kind of reverence for the dog, if you will, to it, which I think is really cool. It's under a tree. There's a lot of things that once you tell that story, it makes a lot more sense. Do you see it too? I'm sure you do, because you look through a camera and you look at a lot of images, but there are sometimes where the photo it clearly tells a story like from the start, where you could put it in front of 1,000 people and 999 of them are going to under kind of what the story is. These two photos both are, if you put it in front of that many people, they kind of look at it with some intrigue, wanting to know more. As you think about what you do with OnX and the media that you are producing and publishing, where do you find the balance in the story that your visual stuff for OnX takes? Where do you find value in that? What are the goals as you guys pump out stuff for OnX for the world to see? What things are you trying to get to resonate with the audience?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind, and the one kind of like guiding light, is authenticity. That is the biggest thing, because like you said, somebody a non-hunter, whatever, looks at that photo, they're intrigued, but they don't understand. But then you get, let's just say, a bird hunter or a field trialer who sees that, and they know, hey, this is a horseback field trial, nobody's got guns, they're watering a dog on the course, and they see that, and it's like that is the real deal. That is what tells that picture absolutely perfectly. So whether it's in that setting or in a bird hunting setting, like everything we push out is real. Like it's not, we try not to stage stuff. So when somebody sees an image, they connect with it, right? And it's hitting harder than just like, oh, here's a studio shot of this or that. It's bringing you into that moment.
Yeah. And I know, because I've done this with you and for you guys, but you try to find that time, that moment of authenticity where this is really happening. But if and when you get the intersection of the absolutely beautiful moments, the beautiful light, the right expression, the right actions that are happening, all in like the perfect light, that's when, I think all things kind of converge into the moment of perfection, right?
Yeah, and that's what I really feel like, especially in this industry, sets really good or really great photographers apart is at least when I'm shooting photo, and I know you probably feel the same way, Matt, it's like you don't want to take away from the hunt. I mean, at the end of the day, for a lot of people, it's a business, right? So you've got to, you want to continue doing business, and by you being a pain in the butt and taking away from the hunt, like that's not a great thing to do in that, depending on the situation. So the really great photographers can be in the background and understand, see that, okay, look at the light, like anticipate when something's going to be happen, capture that look, move around, and kind of be unseen, but also have those both aspects in your mind, and ultimately produce a good product.
I think it kind of goes all the way back to the question and your answer, talking about production and story and all of those things in a reality sense. I think the thing that I've found is having the ability to do your best to anticipate what you don't always know, but being able to anticipate what might happen. And then I think from a tip standpoint, I get asked a lot, like, what are some tips? Moving your feet one way or another, just to change the angle a little bit, to look at composition, to recognize how the light is going to hit something. The one other photo that I wanted to talk about with regard to that was the one of, and I can't remember if this is one of your dogs or not, but the in the woods, like dogs on point, the light is just completely magical happening right here. And as a photographer, it's like being able to anticipate that happening is really, really important. Tell me just a little bit about what was happening here.
Yeah, so this is the instance I was telling you about trialing, training dogs, and I think this was in late March. The snow had just melted, and we were in this super deep, thick woods, and just that light, there was lower light, it was super directional. And again, you can't script this. I can't tell Amos just to go on point and find a bird right in the perfect light. So it's like I could show you strings of photos from this day where it's like, meh, okay, whatever. And then you're shooting through a bunch of stuff. So it's like, oh, well, this one's got a branch in front of his face. This one, like, you can't even see him, but he stopped there, and it was just like, you see it, and it's like, okay, I got to get in the right position so I can get that really cool directional light hitting him in the face. Like, his eyes are just glowing in that photo.
Yep. And
he's obviously a white dog in a shadowed, predominantly dark area.
Yep.
So it's like that one, black and white, it jumps off the page. You're like, wow, this is incredible.
Yeah, the contrast is so strong. And obviously, this podcast some people will just be listening, so you're trying to create this image in your mind, but it's this absolutely black, shadowy, dark woods, and then this white dog that happened to stop in that spot. The light hits it perfect. The tail is up. The focus from the dog, the catch light in the eyes of the dog, all of that just incredible. And then as a photographer, because I've been there, you know that's not gonna stay that way for 20 minutes and let you move around, and I want this angle and I want that angle. This is like a moment in time that you were just right place, right time, right light. All of the things kind of came together.
Yeah, and that brings up another interesting point is a lot of the good photographers or people that you see end up putting out really cool photos. The reason why they have a lot of cool photos is because they've got that camera in their hand a ton, right? Because like that picture right there, you can't stage it. It's like that's one great photo, but then to go out and do it the next day and the next day and the next day, it's like you miss a ton of the shots. You'll never, it's Wayne Gretzky. You miss 99% of the shots you don't take. And if you don't have your camera, you're not going to be able to capture those images.
Yeah, that reminds me again of what you talked about earlier with that. Am I going out to hunt? Am I going out to shoot? Am I filming? Am I running? Like all of these things going on in your head. And I find such joy in being able to say, I've got cameras with me, and like I want to find those moments and constantly like have creative radar on, trying to anticipate what's going to happen, horizon lines, light, skies, all of these things. Like where can we find these compositions? I don't know. I personally can find more joy in that than bagging a limit of birds and bringing them home, where I can go home with a card full of images that I'm just jacked about, that to know that you maybe tried your best and maybe did tell the story of what happened on a really beautiful day.
Yeah, and I often find myself regretting, like I'll get my foot stuck in the hunting wheel and want to hunt, and I'm always disappointed when I get caught up in that. It's like, oh man, I wanted to shoot photos more. So it's like I'm never disappointed if I come back and I was like, man, I didn't shoot a shot, but I got some great photos out of it. Versus like I wish I would have stopped and took more photos.
Yeah, you hear that from people a lot. Like I wish I would have taken more photos. And now we live in a time now where you've got the ability to take a photo just about any time with your phone and everything else, and they do a beautiful job. And you think about back in the day, you truly had to have a camera with you, and now we have the ability, and there's more photos than ever that are out there. Thinking about that, how, especially in your job, how do you sift through and kind of cull through all of the images that are out there? And I'm sure you get, Onyx is going to get tagged all the time, and you're going to get sent this, and oh, this is great. And like, what things do you look for in quality of images? You talked a little bit about it, but like, what things besides authenticity are things that stand out to you?
Yeah, so this is one thing I kind of learned coming up through my career is a great photo is awesome. Sure, print it on your wall, do whatever. But commercial photos for use are a lot different than just pretty photos. So it's like composing from a technical standpoint, it's like composing an image with the end goal in mind. It's just like shooting video with the end goal in mind. How is this going to put together? Where is this going to end up? So, and kind of have coming up through that, now I can be a lot more prescriptive when I talk to photographers. I know in my head that I am looking for, let's just say, a full 2-page spread. And I want to put text on this side, I want the subject on the right, or vice versa, and I need a ton of negative space to be able to put text, to put messaging, etc. Or I need, in an email, for example, I need a photo that is going to tell this exact story. And you're really good at it, Matt, because I often use your photos for random things. Like, man, I'm writing a blog on hydration strategies for dogs. And it's like, I need very specific photos. It's like, sure, I could use a picture of a dog, running across the beautiful, golden light sunset, but it's like, what I really need is a picture of a guy sitting at a tailgate mixing some, hydration powder into a water bottle. Or like those very specific things where even as I'm taking the photo, it's like, man, I don't know what I'm going to use this for. But then it oftentimes comes back years later where it's like, I have got the perfect photo for this scenario.
Right.
So that's like the commercial versus just like pretty picture.
Yeah. I think that's as a commercial photographer or somebody that, you want pretty stuff, the things that are going to, hit the algorithm, if you will. But from a commercial standpoint, I will get asked the most random question, like, hey, do you have any images of a guy on a tailgate with a dog, blah, blah, blah. So I think even when you're out on location on those days, I always hesitate to like put my camera down, because even those times where it's the in-betweens of the beautiful stuff or the things that you're there for, stuff like that is going to happen, and that's part of the story, right? It's so, like, always having, like I said, that creative radar on is absolutely important.
That's like I think it was one of the first times that we maybe shot together, hunted together, was down in Kansas, and the one shot that our designers here at Onyx use all the time is, I think it was midday, just bluebird sky, terrible light. It was us sitting in a tailgate with dogs driving down the road back to another truck. And I cannot tell you how many times that gets used, because it tells a story. Again, it's a great photo, but it's not like oh man, there's leading lines and it's like just that beautiful directional sunlight or blah blah blah, but it's like that tells a story. It meets the needs for whatever, for this piece, for that piece, and those things tend to get used a lot.
Documentary style, if you will. The one photo that I wish I had that would bring back great memories is maybe some more photos of that pizza that we had in that little town for lunch that day. I think I think
sitting out on the tailgate eating pizza.
Speaking of pizza and tailgates and good photos, it was tailgates and good pizza. Couple little off the wall questions, kind of as we head towards home here. What's like your go-to setup if you had one camera, one lens? Like, what's your favorite thing if you are dedicated to that in the field? And maybe it's because you have the ability to kind of be in hybrid mode, you've got a certain setup that you love.
Yeah, so one of my favorite lenses that I've shot on for years now, I don't even know when it came out, but is the Canon 70-200 L glass, the second version. I don't know what that one is, but that is like, that is just I don't have anything bad to say about the lens. Like, just that bokeh you get, the crispness, the clarity is just, it's fantastic. And Matt, you know more about this than I do, but from when they launched that first lens, like, that is just heralded as a great lens.
Yeah, I agree. The 70-200, if I were asked that same question, that probably would be, like, if I had to eliminate everything else, that might be the one, because it's super fast. It's so tack sharp. You can go to 200 and get that compression where things just get so, the bokeh is so good, and still have a little bit of flexibility, with 70, the 70 mil out to 200, especially in the outdoors where there's times where you need to reach out with 200 and grab something, but 70 can, it's not going to get you wide angle, but there's so much flexibility that, I would totally agree that might be the one go-to in my arsenal as well.
Yeah, and the big thing with that is speed too, with that 2.8. Like, it's, probably less so now with better cameras. You can shoot cleaner images. You can, clean up a lot of noise. But even back when you're shooting on like a 5D, to have that speed to be, because a lot of the stuff, I mean, deer hunting, elk hunting, not so much bird hunting, turkey hunting, though, it's like that's at the beginning of the day and the end of the day when light is waning. So to be able to have that chance, you start even messing around with an f4 or a variable lens, like you lose a lot of that.
Yeah.
So to know that when I spin that and zoom in, like I'm not having to screw around with shutter speed or ISO. It's like I can just focus on what's happening here and now.
I can literally remember the first time I had one in my hands, and just that feeling of it was kind of surreal. I liken it to, and I've told the story, like if you've ever picked up a pair of like Swarovski binos and you've lived your whole life looking through, I won't say another brand, but you all of a sudden pick up
like a pair of Tascos.
Yeah,
$40 Tascos.
And you all of a sudden you look through Swarovskis, you can never go back in the way of quality.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. So another off the wall question: as you think about outdoor gear, camera gear, all the time that you spend outside, what's one thing for under $100 that you think is maybe one of the best purchases you've ever made?
I've got a couple of them. The first one's probably kind of a random one, but I love like CTO gel.
Right.
That is one of my favorite tools, and this is more, if I'm going to use some studio lighting or a speed light. But man, you can do some super cool stuff with CTO. Like one of my favorite. Moody. Yeah, like if you're shooting at sunset, it's like if you're to throw a little backlight in there, a little hair light, and you can get those rays coming in, and obviously you're not, you don't get this giant, this giant white backlight around you, like it's just that beautiful look. So that's something that, and I need to use it more often, but I look back, it's like, when it's the right situation and I have that, it's like I've got the formula, like game on.
Yeah.
So that would be the first one, and then to go with that would be speed lights.
Yeah. Yep. Gives you
in
a lot
the
of
field, and that's more like setting things up. But if I have the chance to do it and to utilize those tools to be able to, I mean, you can really enhance a photo with speed lights, with any sort of studio lighting, if you will. But just I can throw one in my bag with a couple cyber syncs on it, and set it up, slide some CTO gel over the top, or, especially if you have two and a little light modifier, then if it's, midday, like you own the light at that point.
Yeah. So I want to see this the next time we're out. I want to see you running your dogs, hunting, coordinating who's going where, driving people, setting up the lunch, making sure that the accommodations are all done, and then I want to see you setting up speed lights at the same time. This is Ben Brettingen, the guy that just told you about even more hats than he's ever worn before. Now he's out there setting up speed lights. The guy does it all. Absolutely.
Yeah, jack of all trades, master of none, 100%. Yeah, all right, we're going to have to do that, Matt. You know what my favorite thing, if you've got some, the Paul C. Buff Einsteins. That was my favorite with the battery pack. So if you've got any of those hanging around, then we can really do some stuff. You tote those in the C-stands, and we'll have a ball.
We'll get stuck on some lake, 5 miles out and frozen in. I had the Paul C. Buff Einsteins. I had the portable power. That's still to this day, I think my favorite softbox that I ever had was that reverse umbrella. The thing was like 7 feet wide, and it was the softest, most beautiful light, but I wouldn't call it super portable for, running around in the field a whole lot, but that made good light for sure.
I remember.
Go ahead.
I remember out on ice fishing doing shoots, and we would have like an 84-inch octobox, and like you had, sandbags to hold this thing up in the wind.
Wind's
but
blowing.
Oh gosh, what it would give you.
Absolutely.
It was just beautiful.
Where's one place that's on your bucket list that you've been able to go a lot of places with your dogs and hunting and all of that? Where's one place, if it were just about cameras, that you'd love to go?
Oh, that's a good question. So it's like my thought process is It is one other thing that sets apart good photographers from great photographers is being able to shoot good photos in lackluster locations. Like, anyone goes to Alaska, say, I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus, but I can take my cell phone out and just capture this beautiful image with clouds rolling through a mountain and there's a picturesque stream. But if you can go to the heartland of Minnesota, or heartland of the U.S., where it's desolate, and find beauty and be able to tell a story there, like, that's pretty cool. So, like, I love shooting. I think I've got a photo of a dog in there, Matt, from Texas, like at the plains of Texas, where it's just, people would drive through it and be like, oh, this is disgusting. But it's like, there, to somebody, there is beauty, and like, I love those flyover states to shoot at. Don't get me wrong, like, I'm going to go to Alaska this year and go shoot ptarmigan and bird dogs in the mountains. I'm super stoked for that, but any chance I can go and have to slog it out and find beauty in places that might not otherwise be perceived as so, that's pretty exciting for me.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, you can name off all the places, whether it be Alaska or Iceland or safari in Africa, all these places I've been blessed to go. I love that, being able to still find beauty in the most mundane of places, whether, just God's made this huge big sky with this incredible sunset, and it doesn't have to be the predictable stuff. Finding beauty in those things is pretty incredible. Where, kind of wrapping up, where can people find some of your, I mean, obviously we can track your experiences with the dogs and the hunting and the OnX stuff, but tell us some of the places we might be able to find some of your stuff.
Yeah, Instagram ends up being a catch-all for a little bit of everything these days, but I still do post some photography on Instagram. Otherwise, one of the best outlets is I do some writing still for print, whether it's Gundog Magazine, Covey Rise, Shooting Sportsman. So if you happen to catch one of those, that's where some of my better stuff now ends up making it into.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you joining me. Obviously, we've experienced a lot of fun things together and a lot of stories, and your ability to tell stories, but like we've talked about, wear a lot of hats. You're one of the best out there to be able to do all of those things, whether it be you're on a YouTube show and the next minute you're cooking lunch on a Camp Chef, and the next minute you're taking photos, and the next minute you're writing an article about it. Like, you're one of the best at all of those things. I know you said jack of all trades, master of none. You're pretty darn close to being a master of all those things. So I appreciate our friendship. I appreciate you coming on, today and telling some of these stories, telling some of the stories about some pictures you've taken and experiences you've had.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity and the kind words, and God willing, I hope we can do it for a long time together.
For sure. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of 1,000 Words Show. Appreciate you tuning in, hearing some of Ben Brettingen's stories throughout his years. And like he just said, I think both of us have a desire to be able to tell stories for a long time, and many more, hopefully, together down the line. So thanks for tuning in today.